Hi everybody. Welcome back to Writer Showcase. Our prodigal son, or prodigal communist uncle, Mr. Commissar Carl, has finally come back from a long hiatus, and we are back in business doing these. I don't. We'll have to see what happens as far as um, doing this more often, but yeah, just excited to get this going.
Glad to be back.
Alrighty.
Glorify it.
It or me?
I'm sure you can be glorified. Is anybody in the hoo-ha? Probably not yet. Hopefully
Not
they'll turn up
really.
later.
Yeah. Maybe I'll be more live in it. I'll be one of those live in infamy type people.
Yeah, something like that.
Perhaps. We should
Dude.
all be so lucky.
Dude.
Yeah, let's burn down the temple.
Oh, so is this yours then, Balerion? I think I recognized this from a while ago.
Yeah, that's the map.
All right.
Is that visible? Because it looks really small on this screen.
You might want to zoom a little bit
Yeah.
because it's
That's-
very small. I can barely make it out.
Let's see if I can zoom in.
Would it help, I think, if you make the window a little narrower?
Let's see. How is it now? Is that better?
So do you see the little thing on the bottom that says the percentage on it? Maybe.
Okay. Yeah. Let me do that one. There. Wow. Now it's really big. Now it's almost too big. All right. Good enough.
Well, I think that I think there's also the there's. Do you see the magnifying glass right next to it? You can kind of move it around like a toggle.
There. How's that?
That one's not terribly visible, so maybe zoom it a little bit more. Maybe since there's actually like on the other side, there's that might help. Sorry.
How's this?
I think that's good.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. There's the map. There's the
episode of Valerian Aryan versus technology.
Well, no. I do know how to zoom in and zoom out. That I know. That I can manage. Sort of.
Undoubtedly. It just seemed as though, like, with this one, it was like, I'm not sure how this this kind of zoom in, zoom out works.
Yeah. I've not done this one for a while. Okay, so now I think they're about here. And we're going to move them. You can see my cursor. We're going to move them up here. And this is where they're going to be now. Margaret and Barama are on their way to court, where they've been invited to join the Barusa, which essentially is a harem, even though they're like only 12 years old, and Barama's a guy. So let's see what happens. Where is my little... So now, after a week in Peje, Garawada and Barama, Garawada is Barama's father, boarded the glorious emperor with Pilamar's retinue. Pilamar is Margaret's father. The company sailed to Chirataba, a large and prestigious city, and reportedly the point whence the Sandaranians have migrated to the island of Ndugala and the mainland many centuries ago. Chirataba still retains some ancient grandeur that was getting flashy, in keeping with the current imperial ethos. Is it ethos or ethos? Ethos. Margaret and Barama try to distract themselves from their dread by admiring the bas-reliefs of ancient Sandaranian legends. That's Margaret explained. Heathen tales say he was born when a ray of the sun fell upon his mother, and there immediately followed an eclipse of the sun. Margaret had been pondering the horrors of the court again when Barama's words jolted her out of her gloomy reverie. I've heard of him. He had a pouch goat named Pobolondo, but what is that goat doing? Never mind. Anyway, he freed his village from an invasion of vampire trees, and several wars later he unified the Sanda. Who's that? Asked Margaret, pointing at a fierce-looking warrior standing on a ship, and half a second, sorry. Standing on a ship and waving a hand towards the rising sun. That's O'Ea, said Barama. He vowed to conquer the sunrise for his bride and assailed the mainland with a fleet of 27 ships. Barama had memorized the story verbatim from a textbook entitled Mountains of Majesty and Greatness, the glorious history of the exalted imperial lineage of Sandaran, exemplifying the 9 virtues and their application to government. Whatever relief this sightseeing may have provided was ruined by the requisite courtesy call to the governor Paranja Bemwe Mujobo, who happened also to be the viceroy of the Isle of Oro. He was about 70 and spent the entire banquet painting a lurid picture of the Barusa with a disturbing glint in his eye. Margaret was eager to escape Paranja's expressions of senile lust, but not so eager to reach the destination. Barama was taken ill and had to excuse himself. From Chirataba began the longest voyage that Margaret or Barama had ever taken, leaving the Isle of Oro for the first time in their lives. To them, Oro had seemed the world. Any excitement was, to say the least, tempered by dread, and they were both boat-sick a lot. The cute munching manatees were almost the only redeeming feature. Finally, they arrived at the port of Dunyaron on the southern tip of the Isle of Ndugala. Margaret was most struck by the poverty. There had been plenty of beggars in the cities of Oro, but nothing to this. She was also shocked to catch her first glimpse of prostitution. The port seemed dirty and flat. It didn't help that a drizzle should hit at exactly the time of their arrival. Margaret and Barama were horrified at how the slaves were treated. Our girl, who could hardly have been older than Margaret, foully abused by her master, a peasant clearly not in good health being used as a beast of burden. This did, however, at least have the merit that it serves as a useful introduction to the ethos of the court. We didn't have nearly so many slaves in Ihalamu, muttered Margaret. And they only wore a badge on their shirt. Here they make them wear heavy metal belts. I don't like it either, said Barama. If they had had time, they might have visited the lovely park of small tree horsetails that gave the town its name. But as it was, they only stayed briefly and spent the night aboard ship. The next day, they began the last stage of their journey, from Dunyaru to Tena, heart of the empire. They say it's the greatest city on earth, said Garawada. The abode of destiny, added Barama. That's what my tutor says. Abode of tyranny, more like it, thought Margaret. Abode of filth. We should have stayed on Oro. Let's see. I don't think. How long have I been talking?
Only a few minutes.
Just 8
Okay.
minutes. Yeah, like 8 minutes at most. So you still have like 7 or so left.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
There's only 3 of us.
Okay, so I think there's time to begin the next chapter then. This is chapter 4. Glory is glorious. When they disembarked at Tena's south harbor, they found themselves among the throngs passing through the Gate of Justice, or Umanganda. Chirataba might be content to call gates Suche, but for Tena, nothing less than a Nanda would do. A horde of beggars immediately assaulted them and were brutally beaten back by the Grey Watch. Margaret wanted to give them something, but that wasn't allowed, and there were too many anyway. Prostitution was out in the open, although the Grey Watch didn't seem much to notice, except to sample the wares. This was a mistake, Count Pilamar realized. No good will come of it. But after all, what else could be done without courting open rebellion? He did his best to shield Margaret from the senior goings-on at the port, but there was so much of it. License is the order of the day under Ekwekwe the Fourth. How will we even get there? Wondered Margaret, demurely ignoring the prostitution. There's no space. Shall we just have to go home? If only, she thought. Of course not, replied her father. The court and nobles manage it, so I dare say we shall as well. I don't want to be a court noble, muttered Barama, trying to avoid stepping in something less than salubrious. What are those people? Oh, never mind. Be still. This is not the time for spouting every silly thing that hops into your mind, said Uncle Garawada, gently tapping his fingers. This is the abode of destiny, you know. Meanwhile, Margaret stared at the statue of Ikri who sat upon the baran tree of justice above the gate, whipping some poor petty criminal. He was probably originally the statue of some cruel Chuggan deity, although he did hold Ikri's crowned candlestick. He did not look likely to judge with mercy, or indeed justice. He seemed to sit in condemnation of Margaret, and she had to steady herself to keep from lurching. Doesn't Ikri punish rich and poor alike? Was all she said aloud. And rewards, said Pilamar. Don't forget that part. But questions must wait. She bowed her head. He doesn't look very rewarding. Count Scottawalder and Bonajobo, said a man wearing a grey uniform and a curious grey helmet covered with wavy lines. The hilt of his sword resembled a grey peace flower. 8 similarly clad men followed. The counts nodded in the Turanian manner by throwing their heads back. Welcome to the abode of destiny, he said. I am Majara Bebwe Runja, Otaku of the Grey Watch, and I am charged by Exalted with escorting you to your quarters in the old palace. An Otaku was a kind of low-level officer. Exalted graces us abundantly, said Garawada and Pilamar, bowing. Majara returned their bow. Great ones will be pleased to go in front of me. I will follow with 4 of my men, for your safety. The other 4 will lead the way and clear up path for you. Garawada and Pilamar nodded again, and the party set out, with Majara and the guards putting rather a damper on conversation. Once past the gate, the company found themselves in the Plaza of Greatness. Lanata Kwechachaga, which spewed forth the putative glories of the Sandaranian imperial house like a fountain of tasteless pomp. The grandeur of it all seemed to hem them in, and the sculptures of the imperial ancestors to leer at them revoltingly. Barama looked almost as ill as Margaret felt. How did they build all this, she wondered aloud, to take her mind off her fear. The Emperor can afford to hire lots of people for public works, suggested Barama. Maybe it's even good for them, keeps them employed. This is the abode of destiny, added Majara, rather unnecessarily. But of course, self-glorification can pall after a while. In Charitaba, the depictions of ancient Sandaranian heroes and saints retained a certain, if not honesty, then at least humanity. In Tenno, they projected sheer power. Much of the art in the capital had been made by Chuggins and awkwardly edited by erasing Chuggin names or painting them over with Sandaranian. Enough Chuggin remained to make the capital at times feel alien even to Sandaranians. Oh, God. Pardon me. Another edit. All right. Okay. Let's see. I think we can probably pause here. Let me see how much is left here. Yeah, I think I will pause here because I'm going to have to get lunch in a moment.
All right, that was a good arrival at court.
They haven't actually got to the court yet. Wait till they get to the court. That's going to be something else.
Yeah, I was about to say that was a nice little save you did there on Otaku. An Otaku is a lower level officer. I just have my notes. No, it isn't. No, it isn't.
Don't tell me otaku actually means something in anime language.
Damn, moonspeak.
It actually does, yes.
Of course it does.
Yeah.
I bet it means something disgusting too. It probably means something perverted because everything anime means something perverted.
It means a super fan.
So I just pulled this off of Google. This is just what it means. It's somebody who's an obsessive, all-consuming interest in a hobby. Most commonly anime, manga, video games, or computers, often to the exclusion of social life. It's basically their equivalent of superfan or geek.
Oh.
Yeah.
So
the Japanese term for a railway fan, like a train spotter, is densha otaku, which means a railroad otaku.
So an otaku is essentially a weeb, a subspecies of weeb.
Well, it's the native species of weeb.
Okay.
A weeb is an otaku for Japanese culture who is not from Japan.
Yeah, right. An otaku is because in Japan, I have this picture somewhere on my computer. You may have seen it already of this normal Japanese guy looking at a guy who's got up to look like some God knows what anime thing with pink hair and stuff. And he's got this bag with this pink hair thing on it. And this guy just staring at it with arched eyebrows and stuff. So I'm guessing that's the normal Japanese attitude towards anime freaks. Yeah. So in Shogun, otaku has something. Otaku comes, I think, from Shogun, and has to do with some kind of number, but I'm not sure which number it is, because it's based. I think they're based on the number of men that you have under you, like the Roman system, except that the numbers are different. I don't remember offhand what number otaku refers to. But I think that's where that comes from. So it's coincidental that it's Japanese as well, but it's not surprising.
Yeah. I just saw that and said, "Oh, that's actually kind of funny." Like, don't worry, it ain't hentai.
Yeah, yeah.
Just you wait. He probably has some hentai in there.
Well, Quakeway the Fourth is kind of hentai. The Emperor is kind of hentai.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, there's a bit later on with where I refer to cross-dressing monkeys.
I do like the constantly referring to the city as the abode of destiny.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
I love it. The civic pride is one thing, but civic arrogance is another thing. When you say this is, like in Game of Thrones in the second season, Karth, they say the greatest city that ever was or ever will be.
yeah.
Meanwhile, it's pretty clear as you continue to see this place, they're just completely full of themselves, and they're isolated enough that nobody can be bothered to disabuse them of the notion.
Yeah, they probably their maps of the world are probably they're probably only the vaguest notion of what the rest of the world even looks like.
Yeah,
like China supposedly before the Europeans came.
I also have to say, excuse me, punish the rich.
Yeah,
I don't think you quite know how this works, Mr. Godfellow.
yeah. Someone should really explain. I guess if you're a god, you don't have to worry about whether people are rich or not.
Yeah. And what is a rich man to a god?
Yeah. Maybe there's a theory among some of the rich that Ikrit can be bribed. So maybe if you bribe them enough, they'll judge you nicely. So they give them extra sacrifices. I just came up with that idea now, but they probably do.
God, he's a Ferengi deity.
Well, they want him to be one anyway. They want him to be one. Whether he actually is one or not is another matter.
Well, anyways,
is there anything else? Let's see. Let's see what else is in the comments. Alliance officers are all the same as we already got over that one. Yeah, we already did that one.
Yeah, it's pretty much just me. I just had to put it in the notes because I'm like, it's really fun. I was just like, that's a very that I just find that coincidence very amusing.
Yeah, it is kind of amusing. I can't. You got me there.
I was like,
you got me there. I love it when that happens.
all right.
So, anything else?
I think I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good too. Works
It sucked. It sucked. Okay, someone had to say that, so I figured I would.
Don't worry. Don't worry. We'll save that for your little harem that you have trapped in your apartment.
No comment.
Yeah, I know better than to ask about that sort of thing.
Oh, fucking tubular! Shut up. Go away. Don't bother me right now.
I'd like some more.
Die screaming. Pretty much. Okay. On that,
what exactly is he feeding? Are we talking actual food or metaphorical food?
I don't know. I just figured Oliver.
well, Oliver is only like 10 or something, so.
True.
Anyways.
So, but speaking of actual food, I have to get my lunch. So you should probably turn over the baton to someone else now.
All right.
All right. I can take over. So.
Evidently, he died. Let me ping him.
Hmm.
Sorry, that was me. Just a second. I need to get my thing back. I need to.
No worries.
Oh boy, I clicked the wrong thing, and now I'm. Oh boy. There we go. Okay, so are we done with this on the screen?
Yeah, just shimped.
Okay. Let me see. Share screen. Let me try if I can do something. Window screen. There we go. See that? This, because Valerian had some artwork to share. This is another one. This is a piece I just recently had commissioned of the characters, just to have it up in the background. This is the two girls playing a game of Go, which is stones in this world. Shenna is being helped by Ath over in the corner, who's been stealing the pieces when nobody's looking, and Elira, who is inexplicably still winning, much to Shenna's frustration. I just figured I'd get that moment all painted up and nice for that. Anyways, so if we recall from last time, Shenna and company just went out to the opera, and they had a lovely night there, interrupted by a little prank from Ath, and resulted in Shenna getting thrown out onto the stage in front of everybody. So we'll see how she gets out of that pretty soon now. This is chapter 42, An Offer of a Drink. Shenna barely remembered the rest of the night at the opera. By the time she slipped back to the box, the show had resumed, with the role of the prince replaced by a suspiciously more competent understudy, though there was little enough show left before the grand finale. Far more spectacular was the scene afterwards in the lobby, when Elira deftly managed to spin Shenna's clumsy antics into a jolly little prank that Elira had supposedly put her up to on a dare. As a result, Shenna found herself swamped with adoration from the very same ladies that only hours earlier had turned their noses up at her. All save Terracine, who had spent the entire second act still searching the lobby for the missing gemstone. Shenna remained only long enough to point out the lady who had taken the gem, and promptly indicated her intention to depart for the evening. After a brief request to mingle with the crowd for a time, Elira generously released her with a quick wish of good night. Kalish remained behind as well, slowly sorting through a queue of servants who approached her with commission offers from their mistresses. Just before she departed, Master Rumsig pulled Shenna aside and offered not to have her banned for life from the opera if she would promise to put in a good word on his behalf with that luscious foreigneress, as he had taken to calling Kalish. It took all the discipline that Shenna possessed to keep from telling him right then and there that she would honestly prefer to be banned for life. Shenna spent the entirety of the palanquin journey and the boat journey afterwards forcing herself to take long, slow breaths to calm her frazzled nerves. By the time she returned to Clearwater and collapsed onto her bed, she had managed to transmute her panic into dead-tired exhaustion. Her misery was compounded even further when she discovered that the bottle of spirits from Elira had finally run dry. Shenna could barely manage to drag herself back into the dining chamber to pick out a few morsels of the food that Iselder had left out for her before making the rounds of the apartment to put out the lights. She made no attempt to claw her way back out of her corset or change into her dressing gown before laying herself down onto the bed to sleep. And just before she nodded off, Shenna noticed the telltale flutter of wings beside her pillow. She rolled over to look, and sure enough, Ath was standing there beside her with a fresh songberry in his beak. Shenna took it with a groan. It would take a lot more gifts like this before she was ready to forgive Ath for his antics this evening. The next morning, work resumed as usual. The consortium assembled for a meeting at Angara's Gold River headquarters. Devram had been hinting all week that he was planning to make significant announcements today. Shenna arrived with Sebastian and, as had become her habit, selected a seat on the exact opposite side of the conference hall as Sebastian. It was only after she took her seat that Shenna realized that Lysandra was already sitting in the one next to her. Shenna quickly buried her attention in a convenient sheaf of notes and schematics, but could not bring herself to fully commit to the facade. Every now and again, she found herself snatching quick glances at Lysandra. The girl was clearly in a miserable state. She slouched low in her seat, with slumping shoulders and a slumping expression on her face to match her posture. Her brown eyes bore the dull, unfocused look of one who had been unhappy for long enough to grow resigned to the sensation. As they waited for the meeting to begin, Shenna's mind wandered back to their time together in the Magisterium, to their first meeting and the promise of a bright new friendship, to the moment that promise turned sour when Lysandra had gotten a look at Athanasius' skeletal visage, and the months of bitter silence that followed. That silence persisted between them, even now, in the face of the final irony that Lysandra herself was practicing the very art for which she had first spurned Shenna's friendship. She deserves her misery, Shenna thought, and turned away to begin the difficult task of convincing herself that her opinion was justified. She had still not accomplished the task when Devram, Kalish, and Angara entered the conference hall in the middle of an intense discussion. Angara was growing visibly older. Shenna tried to brush the realization aside, but found herself growing more and more aware of the signs. Angara's posture was subtly sagging, relying more heavily upon the large walking stick that thudded out each pace more strongly and slowly than Shenna remembered. Lines of wrinkles were beginning to spread across Angara's face that had not been there when Hendrika had worn it. How long would it be before this new body was just as gnarled and twisted with age as the first one, if that had even been Angara's first? The meeting began before Shenna was fully ready. Devram announced the results of the maiden voyage of his box ship, as he had taken to calling the design. 2,700 hundredweights of cotton in the ball had made the journey up the Great Southern River in less than 2 weeks. Included in that figure was less than 1 day of loading and unloading at each terminus, a process that ordinarily would have taken a week and a half, and managed with only half a dozen workers operating a boom crane, rather than the typical army of longshoremen. Devram was still tabulating a full table of time and cost savings, but none protested when he deemed the box ship a success. With the concept proven, Devram announced his intention to expand his fleet to at least 6 box ships in anticipation of a vast expansion of the cargo operations. His primary objective was to expand along the Red River, there being plenty of small ports that could easily be optimized for export of agricultural products. If the villagers are reluctant, we could even offer to supply the materials and labor for construction ourselves, Devram suggested. We've made more than enough of a profit already to justify the investment. Very true, Angara said, nodding slowly. Of course, I would assume that profits might be increased still further by replacing the boom crane operators with undead construct labor, as has already been done with your oarsmen. That was my next priority, Devram said, turning his attention to Shenna. But before he could ask Shenna for an estimate, Karna spoke up. I can handle that. When do you need the constructs completed? Devram laughed awkwardly. I was actually hoping to get Shenna's assistance with this task. She has more practical experience in the area. Shenna watched the twisting frustration spread across Karna's face with entirely too much satisfaction. The student had surpassed the master at last. And in any case, I have need of your assistance on another matter, Angara said. More trouble with the Magisterium, Karna groaned. Just so, I'm afraid, Angara nodded. And so the conversation shifted to the matter about what was to be done with the Magisterium's latest complaints. It seemed that the consortium's ability to charge magic crystals without relying upon moonlight was beginning to rankle the Magisterium's feathers. According to the currently existing arrangement, struck shortly after Hendrika's first successful demonstration of the dynamo, the Angara consortium would compensate the Magisterium at full price for every small-grade crystal they sold, adding only a small surcharge to make a profit for themselves, and they would not sell any large-grade crystals at all. However, the agreement said nothing about those crystals that were not sold but used for in-house consortium operations, such as the linen manufactories or Devram's oarsmen. In the absence of any agreement, no compensation had been offered. Now the Magisterium wanted this loophole closed. And every single crystal that the consortium charged, even those unsold, they were demanding compensation for it. In short, they want us to subsidize their operations entirely out of our own profits, Karna groaned. But then it's always been like this. They find one easy source of revenue, peg all their financial security upon it, and then panic when it comes up short and blame others for their own lack of foresight. And now that I've gotten loose from them and made some profit with my skills here, they've come to hitch me back to their rickety old wagon like to a beast of burden. Will I never be free of these parasites? What can be done to stabilize the situation? Angara said, unmoved by Karna's belly aching. Well, there's still one or two magisters not yet entirely beyond the reach of reason, Karna conceded. I'll make overtures to them and see if they can't bring a little sense back into the organization. At the very least, I can probably drag out negotiations long enough for us to build up a capital reserve against an unfavorable contract. Do what you can, Angara said, and the topic shifted yet again. In time, the meeting drew to a close, and everyone departed to resume their work. Shenna remained seated for a while, watching Lysandra slink out of the chamber, still unable to convince herself that her spite was justified. Finally, she sighed and got up to join Devram and Irval to inspect the new ship. Devram's box ship was presently moored in South Bottom, not far from the entrance to the Southern Canal. The vessel itself was an impressive sight, longer and wider by far than any Shenna had seen before. She's as large as a ship can reasonably get, Devram said. Any larger and she wouldn't be able to transit the Southern Canal. She's already far too big for the northern one. We could always widen the Southern Canal, Irval offered, or maybe add a second set of locks for larger vessels. It wouldn't be difficult to justify the project to the canal operators. Possibly, Devram shrugged. But even if we built out some larger locks, we wouldn't get much more cargo space out of her before we'd have to start widening some of the canals here in the city just to let ships through. That means buying up a lot of buildings in the center of town only to demolish them. Not a good investment in my estimation. A fair point, Irval conceded. The box ship itself was tied up alongside a long block that was about half warehouse and half stone flag stockyard filled with wooden crates, all in various stages of being loaded and unloaded. A boom crane on wheels stood at the water's edge, with several dock hands rolling it into position to begin the loading process. I'm building this facility into my central distribution center, Devram said as the trio walked along the wharf. There was originally a second warehouse there, but I had it deconstructed to free up space for the boxes and the loading cranes. If this proves lucrative enough, I'm thinking of purchasing the next block over and turning the canal between into another shipping berth. That way we could load 2 ships at once. Devram gave them a closer look at his crates. Each one measured precisely 20 paces long and wide enough for a man to enter without crouching. Their walls and corners were sealed with caulk and pitch like timbers in the hull of a ship. The better to see that dry goods stay dry, Devram explained. And the interior bracing beams were lined with hooks for ropes to fasten crates against shifting about in heavy waters. Now this design I'm particularly proud of, Devram said as he strode into one of the crates and tapped a large copper tray suspended just above the roof that ran the entire length of the crate. Took me a while to figure out this arrangement, he continued, but there's actually 2 trays up in there. The top one is filled with ice from a set of hatches in the roof, and the lower tray catches the water droplets and directs them into those drains down the side there. It keeps the entire box nice and cool and reasonably dry. Whatever for? Shenna asked. What do you plan to transport in this? Fresh produce, Devram said. Leafy greens, grapes, fruits and berries, sweet peppers, fresh beans, courgettes, anything you can't get locally during the off-seasons. Nowadays, you have to transport produce in swift courier boats, and in small quantities too, which drives up the price. But with this, we'll be able to bring fresh produce to every table in Accra, from Lakeshore to the Blackstones, and for cheaper than we ever imagined. And what goods do you intend to exchange for this produce? Shenna asked. Grain and root vegetables, mostly, Devram said. Finished textiles as well. However, for these chilled crates, I'm thinking of exporting ice. Is that the same ice used to chill the crates? Shenna asked, indicating the copper trays. Of course not, Devram laughed. That's for ice chips. You know, the low-quality stuff they skim off the canals and dump into the ice wells. No, I'm talking about the large slabs of ice harvested from the lake. They sell for a premium down in the sweltering south. And since these crates are already fitted for transporting cold produce, it only makes sense. In time, the loading process began, and Shenna readied her notes. The dock hands went about the business of marshalling the crates in an assembly area, taking the weight of each crate and judging how best to balance the load on the ship, and then finally lifting them up and setting them down in the boat, where a separate team of workers made the crates fast to the deck with a set of strong cables. Shenna's notes expanded as she observed the process, taking down the actions of each member of the crew and considering how best to render them as undead constructs. You see that? Devram beamed as the workers secured the last crate. A full week of labor in under an hour. That's what progress looks like. You heard it, boys, remarked one of the longshoremen. They're paying us for the whole week now. His companions laughed. Shenna raised her notes to hide the guilt and shame spreading across her face. She kept silent for much of the rest of the day, even afterward when Devram brought her back to Clearwater, only speaking up at last to request that they stop beside a small shop advertising wine and spirits. She dipped quickly inside and asked for a bottle of the strongest item on offer. The shopkeeper pointed her to a shelf of small flasks filled with root spirits, and, after being assured that he offered refills at a discount, Shenna purchased one. The very moment she was back in Devram's boat, she opened up the flask and took a swig, pausing only to match Devram's look of disapproval with a glare of her own. Well, your money's your money, kid, Devram said, shaking his head. But I've lost enough years to the bottle myself to know better by now. I just hope you don't need to make as many mistakes as I did before you figure it out. Shenna ignored him for the rest of the journey, disembarking without a word once they reached Clearwater. Shenna stalked up the stairs to her apartment and stashed the flask in a drawer in her desk before Iseldra could notice it. The weeks and months settled into a consistent, if not entirely pleasant, working routine. Shenna soon replaced Devram's dock workers and pocketed the ensuing bonus without complaint. Meetings came and went, new projects trickled in one after the next, and money flowed into Shenna's accounts from all sorts of places. Hang on, I lost my place. Money flowed into Shenna's accounts from all sorts of places. From her salary, from dividends, from project bonuses, and the various investment schemes that carried on in the background. And every other week she would meet up with Kieran in Gold River to review the progress of her finances, though exactly what end they were progressing towards Shenna had not yet decided. She saw less of Kalish these days. The woman had predictably found herself swamped with commission offers from opera-goers eager to outshine their peers. I said as much, did I not? Elira said when Shenna recounted the matter over drinks one evening. They'll keep her good and busy for a good long while yet to come. Sure enough, though Kalish bemoaned the tedious and uncomplicated busy work, the steady flow of cash from people all determined to outspend one another was a more than welcome consolation. Shenna's flask of spirits drained and refilled itself at a steady, if slowly increasing rate, and Shenna began timing her visits to the spirit shop on her days off, the better to keep her purchases hidden from Devram's disapproving sight. The flask itself traveled with her to South Bottom every day and back to Clearwater every night, stashed in a large side bag that Shenna had ostensibly purchased to carry her notes and designs, though the bag also worked to keep the flask hidden from Iseldra's notice, though Iseldra was spending more and more of her evenings away from the apartment. In time, the autumn rains came and passed, bringing the chill of winter in their wake. One morning, Shenna awoke to the rattle and crunch of boatmen in the grotto clearing a thin crusting of ice from the surface of the water. Shenna spent the morning at her window, watching a team of icebreakers make their way down the canals. Shenna was captivated by the process, having never witnessed its like before. This was, after all, only her second winter in Acre, and the first one where she hadn't been shut up in a dungeon running experiments for Karna every single day. The teams were composed of 4 barges, each advancing side by side down the canal. The first 2 barges were laden with workmen wielding heavy hammers and chisel picks to shatter the ice, and long poles to push the loosened floes out into the clear channel after them. The other 2 barges followed afterwards, with a large net strung between them to catch the ice. And these 2 barges periodically switched out for a newly arrived pair once their net filled up with ice. They use heavy braking barges drawn by draft horses elsewhere in Acre, Iseldra said. But there are no walkways out here, so they have to use manual labor for the whole process. Where do they take the ice when they're done? Shenna asked. Oh, there's an ice well over in Lakeshore, Iseldra said as she brought Shenna another steaming mug of tea. I'd guess that's where they deliver this. There's very little refuse in the waters in this district, so they'll probably accept it with only a cursory inspection. And what if they do if there's too much garbage in the ice? Shenna asked. Well, there are some ice wells elsewhere in the city that deal in lower quality ice, Iseldra said. They might take ice that doesn't have too much adulteration, but if it's still too poor, then the icebreakers will probably just drag it to an isolated cove or haul it to South Bottom and heave it over the dam. Anything so long as it's out of the way. Who coordinates it all? Shenna asked. It must be a terribly expensive affair. Why, the Magisterium, of course, Iseldra said. They arrange canal clearing details during the summer months, so it only makes sense for them to organize ice-breaking during the winter. And I presume those are Mudtown laborers down there working the barges? Shenna said. Naturally, Iseldra sighed. It's dreary, exhausting, and perilous work, and only available one season of the year. Who else would take the work? Still, the waters need clearing, and people need the money. Of course, Shenna said. She had been considering best how to apply her constructs to the job, but guiltily set the idea aside. At a meeting a few days later, Karna made just such a proposal. Is it not shameful that the necessary task of ice removal should be performed with laborers from Mudtown? She opined. If the Magisterium is too set in its ways to avail itself of the efficiencies afforded by modern undead labor, then it falls to us to drag Acre into the present age. I propose to draw up and implement a system whereby ice removal shall be performed by construct labor. We shall show the Magisterium how a modern city operates. Fortunately, Shenna had spent the previous few days preparing a rebuttal. And how shall your constructs spend the rest of the year, Sitting in some warehouse, farming dust, and taking up valuable space until the frost comes again? It seems a monstrously wasteful use of good resources. Unless she proposes to use my prototype, Shenna realized with sudden horror. Her prototype could easily be retasked to perform other useful labors in the city throughout the year, canal clearing especially. It was the obvious choice. Shenna's stomach twisted into knots, waiting for Karna to make the inevitable connection. But the woman said nothing, only fixing Shenna with a murderous glare and slouching low in her seat, defeated. Perhaps she was so fixated on nursing her vendetta against the Magisterium that she couldn't make the obvious connection. Or maybe she doesn't even remember my prototype, Shenna supposed. Karna had, after all, made no mention of it during her time with the consortium so far. If the Magisterium was indeed so set in its ways, then Karna had clearly picked up the same habit from them. It's a tempting idea, to be sure, said Angara, now nearly as old when Shenna had first joined the Magisterium. But there are clearly more profitable ventures to pursue at the moment. Let us set the idea aside to consider at another time. Winter dragged on, and soon the weather warmed into spring. The start of my second full year in Accra, Shenna remarked to Iseldra one morning as she sat eating breakfast, watching the last of the icicles drop from the overhang on her interior balcony. Well, blessings of the new year all around, Iseldra said, collecting the empty dishes. And may this new year be an improvement upon the last. Hear, hear, Shenna agreed. She could certainly do with an improvement over the previous year. Of course, at the moment, Shenna couldn't put her finger on what exactly could be improved. Indeed, this past year had been spectacularly lucrative for her. Still, once a potential improvement became clear, Shenna would not hesitate to see it through. A few minutes later in the dressing chamber, as Iseldra went about changing Shenna out of her dressing gown and into her outfit for the day, Shenna heard the sound of the elevation chamber door opening. "I'm sorry, Elira," she called out. "I don't have the day off today. I'm just about to set out for the workshop." "Not to worry, I shan't be long," said a voice that was distinctly not Elira's. Shenna turned away from the looking-glass just in time to see Madame Perel striding into the dressing chamber without any regard for the half-dressed girl in front of her. Just barging right in as if she owned the place. Which, of course, she did. "Is there a problem?" Shenna said, determined not to show any insecurity when this other woman was the trespasser. "There is a matter I need you to address at the soonest possible opportunity," Madame Perel said. "It concerns the rent." "I thought we arranged to have the bank transfer the money directly into your accounts 3 months ago," Shenna said. "Has there been an interruption of the cash flow?" "Not as such," Madame Perel said. "The matter is that I have increased the rent, you see, 2 1/2 lath, effective this month. That leaves you pleasantly 30 shem in arrears." "What?" Shenna squawked, and it was only a gentle nudge from Iseldra that kept her from leaping out of the dress that was still only half buttoned up. "What's the meaning of this?" "Well, it's all to do with the garden, you see," Madame Perel began. "I know. I've invested a great deal of resources in it," Shenna said. "Were you ever going to compensate me for that?" "A discussion for a later time," said Madame Perel, just as she had been saying for the past 7 months. "The point is, a splendid little garden really does make the property that much more pleasant, and as such the property has accrued further value, hence the increase in rent." "You can't be serious!" "I assure you I am quite serious," Madame Perel said, turning to leave. "I shall expect you to address the matter before the week is up. Have a pleasant morning." And the sound of the elevation chamber doors announced her departure before Shenna could say another word. Shenna spent the entire ride to Angara's headquarters simmering with rage. Sebastian remained unfailingly polite, of course, and it was just as well, for Shenna would have relished any chance to take out a measure of her fury on him. In time, they arrived in Gold River, and Shenna dismounted without a word and made her way to the meeting chamber, already rummaging through her side bag for her flask as she walked. Finally, she dropped heavily into her seat, opened the flask, and took a slow swig to help unwind the spring of tension building within her. As soon as Shenna removed the flask from her lips, she noticed that she had taken a seat next to Lysandra, and that the girl was now staring bewildered at her. "It's been a difficult morning," Shenna groaned and turned away. "You too, huh?" Lysandra said softly. Shenna looked again. Poor Lysandra looked more wretched than ever. Shenna glanced down at the flask still in her hand. She shrugged and offered it up. "Need a drink?" she said. "It's root spirits. Best quality." "Yes, please," Lysandra sighed and took the flask. She timidly raised it to her lips and, after a moment's hesitation, took a quick, shallow sip. Take as much as you need, Shenna said. I can easily get more. Lysandra nodded and took another, deeper swig. Thank you so much, she said, returning the flask. Shenna hesitated before stashing the flask back in her side bag. Do you have a free day soon? She said at length. We could meet somewhere and catch up. I'd like that, said Lysandra. My next free day is in 3 more days. Does that work for you? I think I can change my schedule around to accommodate that, Shenna said. Shall we say midday at the Grand Plaza in Lakeshore? That'll do nicely, Lysandra said. I'll see you then. I'm looking forward to it, Shenna said, and to her surprise, found out that she actually meant it. Her well of spite had finally run dry, and it was time to make amends. At the other side of the meeting hall, several figures entered in black magister's robes. Some of them seemed familiar, particularly one stocky bald fellow that Shenna eventually recognized as Magister Quarn. Karna brought up the rear, with a broad grin painted across her face, a positively horrifying sight. I take it the negotiations with the Magisterium are proceeding well, Shenna remarked. You haven't heard? Lysandra gasped. Shenna blinked. Heard what? The Magisterium is gone. And I think we'll stop there.
Okay. This is good stuff. I like that. That's a good cliffhanger. And I like all of the stuff about Angara seeming to rapidly deteriorate.
Yes. This happens.
You would stop at that point.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
One small thing. Rankle feathers. I think you mean ruffle feathers. Either rankle or ruffle feathers, but I think you got the two of them confused.
Yeah, I might be mixing my metaphors there. I might need to work there with that. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, it totally invalidates the chapter and runs it utterly.
Oh yes. I'll need to rewrite this.
The entire thing will have to be totally redone now.
Yes, fully think. We'll see about that. Yeah.
So, Shenna has quite a bit of a habit, I see.
She's picked up some bad habits from Elira. But at least she's paying for it herself now.
Yeah, I guess.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Let's see.
Nice to see Lysandra back. I keep calling her Lysistrata, but no, Lysandra.
Yeah. She's back. Yeah, that's actually an edit to the previous chapter. You might have noticed at the beginning of this chapter, Iseldra isn't at home. So there was actually an edit that I made to the previous chapter. I have to move some events around in the story, but she in the previous chapter she now says I have an engagement elsewhere to the night, so I won't be home, but I'll leave some stuff out for you. Oh, Lysandra. Yeah. She's oh God, I'm confusing my characters. I'm getting them all confused. I need to start changing everybody's name around. Oh boy.
I think you should name them all Joe.
Yeah, makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
There's this thing. There's this character name that I've had just rattling around in my inspiration folder for it. Honestly, it predates this book. But I need to have a character somehow named Alavastra.
Oh, that's a really cool name. I like that.
I was originally going to call Shenna Alavastra, but I think we can all agree it doesn't fit. Alavastra cannot be the nice lady from HR who brings in donuts and remembers everyone's birthday. She's got to be a warrior princess,
I was thinking like a like a hyper highfalutin aristocratic lady, like worse than Tessarine, like maybe Tessarine's aunt or something, like comes in and like if you know what I mean.
Yeah. But yeah, it's been burning a hole in my notes, just rattling around from story to story, and I've never had a chance to properly use that character name, and I need to do it. I need something to put it in.
Well, hey, I'm not stopping you.
I'll figure something out eventually.
Yeah.
Anyways, anything else?
No, I don't have any more feedback. This was really good. I'm interested to see where it goes. The Magisterium being no more is a crazy story.
Especially because I've spent a lot of chapters establishing all the stuff that they do for the city.
Yeah, and even in this chapter, they seemed like they were a formidable foe, but I wonder if did Angara absorb whoever was in charge of the Magisterium and take it over that way?
Well, Angara is still wearing Hendrika's body.
Okay.
But as to what happens, what is specifically going to happen to the Magisterium, well, we'll see that next time.
Bother. Now we'll have to wait another year for the next showcase, because that's how often they run these days.
Yeah. No. It's just how things are around this neck of the woods.
I'm assuming Shenna will eventually become socially aware and all that, and repent and stuff, and we still have to work our way up to that.
Well, I did mention that this is going to end with a revolution.
Are we going to see Comrade Shenna?
Well, that would be telling, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Anyways, I believe that's it for me. Done? What do you got for us this week?
Okay, so basically what has happened up to this point is we are continuing the battle for the second battle for the Darkmouth, and the guys have taken out the okay, so the sheet or the Delphar have broken through the gate and are now moving in. And so the and Amora just barely got bodied by this world's version of Sandy Claus. So, yeah. Okay. Alrighty, so let's go. Oh. Okay, so all right. Farah felt the bloodlust rise inside her as she and Arbitra slashed and hacked at each other, red sparks flying from their clashing blades. All around them, Kurafir's ghosts and her Olympian soldiers battled the Delphar. Back and back they were pushed, but the Olympians made the Delphar pay by each step in blood. With a loud cry, reinforcements from further inside the fortress rushed to the battlements above the courtyard and began pouring arrow after arrow into the Delphar. However, the enemy began loosing volley after volley into the defenders, which allowed several of the Delphar to rush up the stairs to assault the ramparts. Despite how the battle was steering toward a defeat for the humans, Farah kept fighting. If there was a chance that this could be prolonged until her father came with reinforcements, she had to kill this Delphar witch. The elf lady's sword slammed into Farah's over and over, the crystalline blade sending a reverberation down Farah's arm every time it struck her sword. With a snarl, Farah drew on the power of her two artifacts, summoning bursts of poisonous fire to hurl at her opponent. Arbitra raised her hand and closed her fist, extinguishing the fire before it could hit her. You cannot match me, mortal. Arbitra spun her sword through her fingers before parrying Farah's next strike. I was ancient before you were born. Then why can't you beat me? Farah hissed as they exchanged a rapid series of strikes. As if this had been the last straw, Arbitra attacked even more furiously. The Delphar witch's sword seemed to be everywhere at once, glittering blades shining in the sunlight as it struck at Farah. As she attacked more ferociously, the Delphar warriors swept over the battlements, slaying Braithen and Olympian alike. Soon Farah was left with only the ghostly apparitions in her defense of the courtyard. They began to fall as the enemy pushed through. You cannot win against us, Arbitra said as her blade hit Farah's. We are the elder race. You have stolen immortality, and now we have come to exact the price of your sacrilege. As she spoke, a loud boom sounded as the section of wall Kamul was guarding burst apart. The wall near Kamul exploded inward, sending the Olympians on the rampart into the air to crash into the ground. Thinking quickly, Kamul slid into the umbriel and flew to the men at Braith, ending with their bows firing at the gap. We're running out of arrows, Charlin yelled at the Kamul as he raised his bow and let loose another shaft. We can't hold them off at a distance at this rate. We'll have to close a retreat. Then we must hold the gap and fill it with the enemy's dead. Kamul raised his mace and looked at his men. Any remaining archers to the front? Any remaining archers in the front, give your arrows to the ones behind you and prepare to close with the enemy. He called, Rise, soldiers of Braid! Our hour has arrived. The men roared as one and charged forward, their halberds and swords drawn. Kamul rushed forward into the gap as the men, or spear-wielding Delphar came forward. The archers behind them, using in their own volleys at his men. With a loud crack, Kamul's mace collided with the first few sword spears and cracked them in two. Sending out a powerful wave of fear, Kamul bashed his way into the center of the enemy, his own men charging after him and pushing the Delphar back. The Olympians held the walls above them, the enemy trying to push forward, only to suffer incredible losses. Down in the gap, Kamul stood against the tide of Delphar, Elorin and Charlin fighting at his side. Even as men died around them, the men of Braith made sure that just as many of the enemy fell to their blades and spears. Hold fast! Kamul slammed his mace into an unfortunate Delphar, sending the creature into the broken wall. A loud crack accompanied the collision as his body snapped. Again and again they came at him, but Kamul was in his element. Battle was what he had been born for, and this was the most pleasing battle he'd ever been a part of. True, they were steadily losing ground, but he felt no qualms about slaughtering as many of these inhuman monsters as came within his reach. Often there was a piece of him that regretted killing other humans, but these things, no. He could kill them all day long without any regrets. However, the enemy continued pouring into the gap and pushing the defenders back, causing the defenders on the walls to retreating toward the rear wall air fortifications so they wouldn't be overwhelmed. Camul smashed down Delphar after Delphar while his man defeated, but soon the sheer press of numbers became too much for even his strength. At the corner of his eye, he saw Charlin fell, 2 Delphar stabbing with their sword spears. Elleran rushed in, slashing the head off one of the Delphar, then burying the head. Burying his axe in the second. His head. He stood over the body of their friend, cutting other Delphar down with his axe. Come on, we need. He cut off as another Delphar came in with a sword, stabbing in the side and then slashing his arm free. Elleran! Camul yelled and charged toward the Delphar, slamming his mace into the creature's head. The Delphar's helmet split like a melon, the helmet underneath crushed by the force of the blow. Reaching down, he picked up his friend, carried him back to the final wall, making it in before they closed the postern gate and dropping the defensive grates. Elleran! Camul put his hand on his head. We'll get you better, I promise. I'm dead, Camul. Elleran coughed. It is finished. For me, at least. No, I can heal you. Camul tried to exert his will on the wounds, but the injury only partially healed. It's all right. Elleran smiled, blood tinging his teeth. I'm only here because of you. I'd still be a slave if you hadn't led us to freedom. Coughing, he looked up at the sun high in the sky. It's a good day to die. A free man under the sun rather than a slave deep in a mine. He coughed. He always said, better to die free than live as a slave. You were right about that. Something about that tickled at Camul's mind, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. Blinking back tears, Camul put his hand on his friend's face. Rest well, Elleran, he whispered. May you find peace in whatever realm comes after this, my friend. High above them, the sky began to darken as the sun started his journey below the horizon. Taking a firm grip on his mace, Camul glanced up at the sun, then toward the gate where Curfear and Farah had been. Silently, he slid into the umbriel and pulled himself to the gate. Farah and Arbiter were embattled in the yard, while the Delphar were swarming over the walls. With a roar, Camul dropped onto the wall and smashed his mace down. Crash before he began to swing his mace in the wild arc. The Delphar were flung from the wall, bodies broken and shattered as he exerted his will. It unleashed his fury on them. Retreat, he yelled as he came back to Farah and engaged the Delphar general. Back to the fortress! Farah called right as she slid into the umbriel and escaped. More ghostly warriors appeared, holding back the Delphar while the humans ran back to the gates in a final wall before the citadel. Farah and Camul landed on the wall, watching as the Delphar swarmed the empty fortifications, raising their shields to deflect oncoming arrow fire from the defenders. Several of Curfear's ghosts covered the retreat. Curfear was waiting for them am on the wall already, the eye holes in his mask fixed on the Delphar, our army, a sense of anger and despair coming from him. We are trapped, he said. You're cracking his knuckles. Kamul nodded. We don't have the troops to hold against the enemy for much longer. He glanced back at the wound defenders who were nursing his wounds. Do either of you have skills in healing? Some, Kurfir shrugged. I will do what I can, but my strength is severely diminished. Kamul nodded to his friend, then turned toward the Delphar, filling the streets of the middle section of the Saurus. We'll do what we can, and here while you tend to the injured. Nodding, Kurfir slid to the Umbriel and flew down to the wounded. Furtively, Farah brushed her metal-clad fingers against his and Kamul's. Do you think we can win? She asked. I don't know if we can. We may have to depart and lose the castle. Kamul tapped his hand against hers, not taking his eyes from the Delphar. We will have to discuss it. If we abandon the fortress, then we condemn all inside to be slaughtered by the Delphar, and we will eventually have to take this castle back from the enemy. Farah nodded. So, we wait for my father to arrive? We may have to. Kamul leaned his hand against the battlement and watched as the enemy moved forward, cutting down through the ghostly warriors that remained. Unless they break through our defenses before he arrives, then we will fight to the end. Farah put her hand on his shoulder, side by side. Taking a deep breath, Kamul put his hand on hers, side by side. He agreed. And that's where we'll leave it for this week.
That was a really interesting bit at the beginning where the creature says you don't deserve your immortality.
Mm-hmm.
That was really good. I like that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. And the other bit I remember is the death scene. That was nice. So what happened to Santa Claus?
He is vanished and will be appearing more in book 2.
Okay, so they haven't been defeated yet.
Not quite yet, no.
Good. I think Delphar icky.
Well, I need to... 1 second. I will be right back.
He had to go because he was so grossed out by the Delphar.
Yeah, makes sense. Either that or he had to urgently go back and rewrite Santa Claus into this.
Yeah, maybe.
I believe it. I wonder if there's Christmas in Accra.
Sorry. What about Accra?
I wonder if there's Christmas in Accra.
They must have holidays of some sort. This is something that people
They'll probably introduce it in its proper commercialized form.
Yeah, this is something people don't always touch on.
Hang on a second, I need to go away.
Okay. Now that I've driven them away, I guess I'm in charge.
I heard a knock. I thought it was my door. It was my neighbor's. Just had to check.
Yeah. Anyway, this is something that people don't always bother with. What sort of holidays would people with the culture in the world have? It's usually tied to their religion in some way. So I don't even know what religion people have in Accra.
Yeah, I don't think I've touched on religion at all. I don't think it's going to make an appearance.
Yeah, well, there might also be. I guess there could also be civic and historic things.
I was going to. I was at one point going to have the like some religion from the south that was basically going to have sort of the Zoroastrian dualism, with the good god and the evil god who are fighting each other and they're in conflict and stuff. But I couldn't get it to a satisfactory place. So
yeah, what are you gonna do?
But there's still time to add stuff on.
Yeah, I mean, there's also people also make holidays commemorating various historic events in their history and stuff like that. So there's also that. So I don't know much about Accra history either.
Yeah, I don't think I ever bothered fleshing out that big old book that Shenna was supposed to read but never did.
Well, she never read it anyway, so I guess she doesn't know it either.
Anyways.
Yeah, or they can celebrate or maybe they just have a day in honor of magic, or Magisterium Day, to celebrate the foundation of the Magisterium.
Maybe.
Something like that.
Maybe.
The holidays in my culture, of course, based on their religious beliefs, so they have to do with the life of the Karat, the founder, and all that kind of thing.
I thought that was done.
What about Don?
I thought that was him. I heard the voice coming through from the radio or television or whatever it is, and I thought that was done.
Nope. Haydn. Nope. They just finished having Haydn's piano concerto. Now they have the ad voice guy on. Sorry, I'm just finishing up lunch. Ironically, I think we're almost done anyway.
Sorry, just had to do something really quick. I really did want to put it in that it's better to die free than live as a slave. And it's ironic because he kind of is that man. And
What's that?
well, the uh, um, the living free, like you mentioned the death scene where it's living free, but kind of the problem is he's saying that to a man who's going to be a slave for eternity, really.
Hold on. I hate it when that happens.
Mm-hmm.
There. Okay. Just finished lunch. So those are the, I guess those were my main thoughts. Let's see. Yeah, the death scene, and what was the other thing we were talking about? Um,
Most of it was action, so I don't blame me if you
I mean, it sounded good action, like good action, but I haven't retained very many details. Elfar is singular as well as plural.
yeah, kind of.
Someone thought the singular would be Delpha or Delph. I guess if you have a singular as Delph, then it sounds too much like elf, so that would probably not work out so well.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. Well, I think that we'll call it good there. Thank you guys for coming. Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, of course. All right. Well, we will see you guys later. Bye.
All right.
Some point in
See
history.
you later.
Have a riot.